Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Have a nice evening.
Next up is a presentation of the Barnstable County Community Septic Loan Program. Chris, why don't you give us a quick overview on why we're here?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll give them an opportunity to come up. You can sit at the table. We do have a mic up there that is an area mic. Just in terms of last year when we approached, or this past May, when we approached town meeting about our sewer program, there was a fairly good contingent of people that were concerned about how do we address the issue of the town is going to spend, as part of phase 2, money to put sewer in the road, but how do we get the sewer from the road into the individual homeowners? And in Chatham, the experience they've had is between $5,000 and $7,000 has been the expenditure that people have had in order to connect. And some of the residents that attended some of the public meetings indicated that they were having a hard time getting a home equity loan, or they said, what are other avenues that are available to the community to be able to address that need to hook up? So I actually started to explore and had come across that the county already has a program. I think there was some sentiment that maybe we should start our own. I don't believe that duplication is ever necessarily a good thing. And if there is a program that is basically modeled on what we would be doing anyway, I think that that makes sense to pursue. And we did ask the folks from the county to come out and kind of explain how the program works and how people would be eligible or not eligible, and maybe some of the parameters of the program.
Welcome. So we have a new mic on the table. We're going to try it. If it doesn't work, we're going to run over with one of these mics.
Okay, sounds great.
Just speak as loud as you can without yelling. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much. My name is Sean O'Brien. I'm the director of the Barnstable County Department of Health and Environment. With me tonight is George Hoyfelder, who's the director of the Alternative Septic System Test Center, and Kendall Ayers, who's the administrator for the Septic Loan Program. We just wanted to say thank you for having us in tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to Kendall.
If you don't mind, I have some handouts for you. It's a brochure, an application, which I think you'll see is quite simple.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. As Sean mentioned, my name is Kendall Ayers. I'm the administrator of the Septic Loan Program. To start off, actually, the town of Harwich years ago actually went to town meeting to borrow money. I think you borrowed $400,000 on the 2 occasions, maybe $600,000 total, back in the early 2000s. And
before my time, so.
it was, Barnstable County was the administrator of all the towns in Cape Cod, including Harwich. But it was a burden for many towns to keep this thing going. We would admit it. You'd borrow the money, you'd transfer the money to Barnstable County. We'd spend all the money, take care of all the paperwork, send all the paperwork back to you, and then you folks had a bill on your property taxes. Good program, cumbersome program. So what happened is back in 2006, Barnstable County, with the permission of all of the towns on the Cape, including Harwich, began to borrow money from the Water Pollution Abatement Trust, then it's now the Clean Water Trust. We borrowed originally $30 million, and we have had principal paid back that we're loaning out right now, so we're close on $40 million in loans since 2006. Which is around 3,500 loans total. The program is a 5% interest rate loan payable over a 20-year term. Now, what exactly does this cover relative to sewer hookups? The simple answer is everything. Everything that's directly related to the sewer hookup. So that's starting with the permitting part of it. Of course, the hookup from the pipe from the house up to the street is covered. Incidentals, if there's a need for a grinder pump, for example, that's covered. If the existing septic system is in the backyard, the plumbing within the basement will need to be rerouted. We'll cover that cost. We'll cover the cost of the abandonment of the existing system as well. If your lawn gets torn apart, we can pay for the repair of it. Same with the driveway. Anything and everything that is related to the sewer hookup is covered. The way this works is, well, there's the application. I gave you a copy of the application. I think you can see it's quite a simple document, single page, front and back. A homeowner can go to our website, barnstable-county-septic-loan.org. They can see frequently asked questions. They can fill out an application there, print it out, send it in to us. We review it. We do a title search. If there aren't any problems, we can approve someone within 24 hours. We notify the homeowner that their application has been approved. And then from there, we ask if they have received bids from contractors to start the process. If not, we suggest that they get heading in that direction. Once they have chosen a contractor, they would sign the contract as an agreement of that. They would send it off to us. We would prepare a betterment agreement for the homeowner to sign, mail that off to them. Once we get that back, and that allows us to pay the contractors, and not until we get the betterment agreement signed can we start paying anyone. We notify the contractor that Barnstable County is going to be covering the cost of the sewer connection, and the project is underway. It's really that straightforward. When the job is done, we cannot make the final payment until we get something from the DPW stating that the installation took place in accordance with local requirements. At that point in time, when the job is complete, we record a notice of betterment assessment at the Registry of Deeds, and we start billing. That's the basic process. There will be money available. There's money available now. There will be money available in the future. And it really is as straightforward as I hope to make it sound.
Sounds very straightforward.
Yeah.
Questions? I'll start with Larry.
Thanks again, Kendall and George and everyone for coming. So you're specifically stating that this loan could be used for connection fees from the town to a collection for us going into Chatham. Doesn't have to be a sewer septic tank replacement.
Correct.
It can be used for that.
Correct, yes.
The same can be said of alternative systems if we get to that. It can be used for those funds.
I should say that of the $40 million that was loaned out, we've covered, of course, conventional septic system upgrades, but IA system, innovative alternative systems, and sewer hookups. So any and all of that we can cover. And as far as residential, it's 100% residential, this program. But that's anything, primary residence, investment properties, summer homes, rental properties, condominiums, anything residential.
Okay. The maximum loan is 5% for 20 years.
That's correct.
What you're saying, and that's payment that's tax deductible. Those payments, if I read this.
I'm not sure I want to go in that direction. We every March, April, a lot of people call us and ask us how much interest they paid the past year. So I think that makes their intent.
And I think, George, you commented at one of our collaborative meetings that it may not be, in recent years, it may not have been used quite as much as you hope, because 5% is not much better than you can get from a bank.
Right.
Is there any hope of making that more attractive? You know, lowering the rate, or let me ask another option. Is there a way that if us as a town wanted to make it more attractive, help those connecting, that we could add to that to lower the rate? Is there any mechanisms to help make that attractive for those? That was a major issue of us on our discussion on getting through was.
One thing that, firstly, you saw the application. It's really simple. We do a title search where we don't do a credit check per se. So we deal with a lot of people that have had credit issues in the past. So I'm not sure that they can go to the bank to get a line of credit.
Okay.
You know, so we catch a lot of people that would otherwise fall through all the safety nets out there. We, as I mentioned, we have borrowed $30 million. We're using the principal that has been repaid to us. At this point, when we go back to borrow from the Clean Water Trust in the future, 3 years from now, whenever, we were borrowing at a 0%. We will be borrowing at a 2%, and we'll be loaning out at 4%. So somewhere down the road, near term, it will drop from 5% back to 4%, or down to 4%, if that helps you out.
Anything that lowers it makes it, useful for people connecting us is my goal
I
at the
understand
moment.
that.
Yeah, it's not a secret, right?
Thank you, Larry. Julie?
Yeah, I think it's a great program, and so glad you have it. In terms of the payment, is there like a payment book that people receive, or is it, debit? I mean, how do they make the payments?
We send off an amortization schedule once the job is done, so people will know what to assume. By the way, it's on like a mortgage where the payments are level. Our principal is level, but it's at declining interest.
Okay.
So immediately you start paying less on your interest.
Mhm.
If you make an additional payment, that goes toward the principal, so you further will reduce your interest amount. We, at this point in time, we bill directly in paper, but we're in the process of working things out, so we're going to be near term doing electronic billing, and people will be able to pay with credit cards and debit cards and electronic checks, those types of things.
Okay. And because of the recording information, obviously that balance would get taken care of if a property were to transfer.
There is an option for the buyer of the property to assume the outstanding obligation.
Oh, okay.
That needs to be in writing from Barnstable County prior to the transfer of the title. But mostly, if someone's buying a property and they're going through a bank, the lender wants to slate
Just
clean so
settle
our
it
our
anyway,
loan gets
right.
paid off, but there is a possibility of an
Okay.
assumption.
Thank you.
Sure. Well,
Thank you. Janelle?
Nope, thank you for doing that.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming in, but just one question, because we're looking at it from one direction. I'm trying to look at it from the other. When there's a main, everybody has to hook up. So the question I have is, does everybody who submits to get the loan get approved for the loan?
Pretty much, if you're
Right.
not current with your property taxes, if there's something, if you have outstanding executions that haven't been addressed, it takes a lot to not get approved. So
But there is a potential to not get approved.
it's very small, right? We're 99.9% approved.
So we're probably going to have to address that, because everybody's got to hook up along the main. It's not just people who can afford to.
Thank you, Don. Chris?
I do think, though, where this is structured, Mr. Chairman, as a betterment process, that because there is a lien against the property, that, this makes where I can see where your loan rate would be 99, or approval rate would be 99.9%. So I just, in terms of, at least from what I got from feedback, folks in the town of Chatham, which is well ahead of us in terms of having a sewer plant already and having people hooked up, I think most of the folks in Chatham have actually been able to do it through the private sector, through their home equity loans. So, our first round here will be about 600 homes. So, it may only be 5 or 10% of the people that I would think would want to use this. But people were concerned that if they were not eligible for a home equity loan, they could still get a loan through, in terms of house values and that interconnect.
Sure. I mean, we have a default rate with our loan, with our $40 million out there. It's not a high default rate, 2.5% in some cases. We are very proactive in going after people, trying to encourage them to make payments to us. We have an attorney we work with, but again, if we know someone is really going to have a hard time paying us because of their past history, they may not get a loan from us, but it's rare. Again, the vast majority of people get loans from us. We're here to help people out. We understand that. We're not trying to make it difficult at all.
Thank you. Chris, anything else?
Also,
Anyone else?
No, fine.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
There was one other thing of consideration when you start to think about extending a sewer is those properties that are, you have a plan, it's out 3 years. Now what happens if Joe or Mary has a failing septic system? You don't want them to put that capital in the ground, so we also, as a department, have assisted towns in that transition, and that would be somebody's got 2 cesspools, they're gonna be hooked up to the sewer in 2 years. The cesspools have some problems to them, or they're selling the property, and the bank says, hey, we don't wanna see 2 cesspools there. We've helped towns, Falmouth and Provincetown, transition by allowing or working with the Board of Health on what a workable solution would be to get them by, satisfy the bank so that the property can transfer, so it doesn't lock up everything. And that usually involves putting in a quick fix, which might be use the existing cesspools, pump on the schedule, put an alarm at 2/3 of the height of it. All that is sort of can be a tracking nightmare for Board of Health. So we will offer the assistance as you go forward with this to the Board of Health to track those. We have a tracking program for instance, all your alternative systems in town. You have 35 or so, and we track those for the towns, all the maintenance contracts, what are required for things. So we're just make you aware that when you go into that transitional period, there may be a time when that's kind of needed, when your Board of Health will be allowing substandard systems to continue to be used, simply because you don't want people dumping capital in the ground. We'll also be very careful in that regard to watch where your plans go so that we don't receive a loan request for somebody to put a system in that area.
That's a great service. Thank you.
Yeah,
Chris?
just to that end, it's a good opportunity, a good lead-in, that we currently have survey crews that are on the ground now that are outgoing and doing survey points to folks at their individual sill levels, so we can see whether we need grinder pumps or they could do it with gravity. And in the review of that, I mentioned about 600 homes. some of those homes, that number will fluctuate a little bit, because if we have a neighborhood that we can hook up through gravity, as opposed to a neighborhood that we may need to have grinder pumps in, there is going to be some flexibility to those properties that we hook up in that area. We certainly published a map that showed the approximate area, and it is an approximate area. But if people do have a failing septic system and we can do it through gravity, I think we wouldn't mind kind of catching those in the next 2 years, as opposed to waiting 5 or even 20 years, as Phase 8 is 20 years out, more than 20 years out. So to that point, I think if people, when the survey crews come through, or they want to at least acknowledge, we already have maps on the website that they're in that area, please let us know, and we'll see if we can make some accommodations to those homes. Ultimately, the plan is to clean up the environment. So if we have those properties that are in that state, we might as well try to capture that if possible.
Absolutely sense.
Great. Thank you, and thanks for coming. Thank the county for all your services. I'd like to recognize Jack Units in the back, the county administrator. Thanks for your support.
Thank you, Kendall.
Okay, next up is a presentation, Lower County Road Status Update. Lincoln Hooper.